To close our formal agenda, I am delighted to introduce Maxine Gee, who's the Chief Risk Officer at the London Stock Exchange. Maxine brings a powerful perspective on how resilience and confidence underpin growth, not just in crisis, but in how we manage capital, markets and trust. Welcome, Maxine.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. There's been some hugely interesting and timely topics discussed with this audience, and I'd like to give you my perspective on being a CRO for a financial services provider that is considered critical national infrastructure and has systemic importance to the UK economy. I know I'm the last of many speakers. I'm between you and lunch, so I'll try and keep to my time slot. The London Stock Exchange, as many of you know, is the provider of the primary exchange to the UK. At the core of what we do is to connect those who need capital with those who have capital. And we provide the primary venue for companies to IPO, whether it's on the main market or on AIM. And in the near future, we will enable private company shares to trade through our private securities markets, leveraging the new UK's PISES regulation, which stands for Private Intermittent Securities and Capital Exchange System. I know that's a mouthful, that's why it's called PISES, which I will come on and explain to a bit more later. We also provide the electronic platforms and underlying infrastructure that enables secondary trading in these markets, and are home to one of the fastest growing fixed income markets globally. And the LSE is part of the LSEG group, which sits at the centre of financial markets and is a leading provider of data and financial markets infrastructure. It's 26,000 people delivering products and services to 44,000 customers in 170 companies. So one of the key attributes to the success of the exchange and LSEG is effective risk management. And there are three themes that I would like to share with you today, and I think they've come up more or less through all of the different conversations and panels today. So firstly, resiliency. How risk management is key for ensuring the stability of our financial infrastructure services, which supports investor confidence in the UK. The next is partnership. How risk managers act as a conductor within the organisation, providing the business leaders with valuable risk insights and helping join the dots between different parts of the organisation to break down barriers. And the third is enabling growth, a theme we just discussed a lot on the last panel, which is about how the deep understanding the CRO has of the business and understanding the strategy and understanding the risk level to the organisation is balancing the risk between doing something and not doing something. So I'm going to share some examples of this to hopefully bring it to life. The first, resiliency. Resiliency is key to the London Stock Exchange. As critical national infrastructure, the LSE is a venue that must always open and close on time. Any resiliency issue or blip, no matter how tiny, always receives, and quite rightly so, a significant amount of public scrutiny and impacts LSE's reputation. To give you an example of this, if you remember the CrowdStrike incident in July 2024, which caused so much disruption to so many businesses on a global scale, the LSE was relatively unaffected. The exchange was operating as usual. So imagine our surprise when it was announced on a well-known national news outlet that morning that LSE was affected by the incident and wasn't operational. Fortunately, it turned out to be inaccurate reporting due to the fact that one of the FTSE indices had been impacted and wasn't on the website. Of course, our media teams made sure this was immediately corrected, but the first reaction from the outside world was that there was an exchange problem. This demonstrated two things. The first is the huge amount of attention that is placed on our business and the sensitivity of market participants to any actual or potential disruption at the exchange. This means that in everything we do, we take the risk to our services extremely seriously, and we run our operations accordingly with an almost zero risk appetite for disruption. The second is keeping an eye for the unexpected and realizing that even when you do everything right and continue to function well, it's a good idea to have a very well-resourced media team. We heard in the previous panel about the ever-changing geopolitical landscape, and when looking at the recent tariffs in the US, it's a good example how these can impact the markets very suddenly with significant consequences. The extraordinary market volatility these events created during April tested global companies, and LSE was no exception. We saw market conditions that led to a surge of trading volumes being routed through the exchanges system that we hadn't seen since the Brexit referendum in 2016 or the global financial crisis of 2008. The combination of inbuilt resiliency, automated controls, together with the diligence of experienced operational teams, meant the LSE could continue to operate safely during these periods of massive volatility and provide its services to the UK economy at these critical moments. And I'm pleased to say that our systems held up and operated at only a fraction of their total capacity, even during those turbulent days. And these moments also teach us the value of investing in ourselves and what may come in the future. In 2023, the LSE completed a landmark hardware upgrade and data center migration, one from which it was residing in for almost 30 years before. From a CRO perspective and my technology background, the experience of running a rapidly aging data center and the need to relocate to a new data center was entirely something that could be classed as keeping me awake at night. Whilst relocating the core infrastructure of one of the busiest stock exchanges in the world carries significant risk, but it was an example where the risk of not doing something would have been greater than the inherent risk associated with the migration. I'm pleased to say it was a seamless move. We closed our markets on a Friday while still at our old data center and migrated our entire operation over the weekend, including managing a long list of customers with direct connections to our systems, and opened as normal on Monday, the 18th of February 2023. The absence of any headlines on the move, and I did forewarn my sons that if LSE was on the news that day, they may not be seeing very much of me for a few days, was testament of how much it went to plan. As the LSE CEO, Dame Julia Hoggett, said afterwards, "It's not every day you move the FTSE." So it was a huge team effort, and the role of the CRO function was really key to provide that reassurance to the board, to the regulators, to the ExCo, and to the wider market on LSE's ability to manage the associated risks with such a phenomenal task. The LSE's experience of being a critical part of national infrastructure means we're cognizant of introducing new risks. This is why we have architecture designed with full redundancy, so we are resilient by design. In the UK, we need to keep this at the forefront of our minds when we're seeking to enhance capital markets. New structures, such as the pre-trade consolidated tape, could inadvertently introduce single failure points to the UK markets. These are the types of indirect impact of regulation which, as risk officers, we should be mindful of. And also, in recent news, I would be remiss not to mention the ever-present cyber threat. I must admit, I've spent a lot of time thinking about my role as a CRO when it comes to cyber threats, and I'm sure everyone else has, and we've mentioned the recent M&S attacks during the previous sessions. So what can a CRO do when it comes to cyber threats? From my perspective, a key aspect of that is to join the dots between the CISOs, technology, operations, business, even the media departments and comms. We need to educate the leaders of the cyber risks and how to prepare for the worst case should it materialize. And you are therefore well placed to support the business in preparing for the unfortunately increasingly likely day when a cyber threat comes knocking at your business door. At the LSE, we run regular scenario tests which bring the stakeholders together to simulate and understand how a cyber attack might manifest and how to respond. We find that simply bringing the active people together, ensuring they know who each other are and they have a common understanding, is one valuable step into improving our capacity to react and respond to such incidents. And this brings me on to the next theme today, the fundamental role of strong partnerships in ensuring we build and run a risk management approach that is both robust and effective. What does partnership look like for a CRO? Well, I see my partnership with the business as being at the table, involved in the conversations, whether it be on strategic direction or management of a live issue. To do my role well, I need to understand the business just as much as my commercial colleagues, and they need to understand in me that they have someone that is there to support them. Keeping an open mind and offering solutions is far more effective than being seen as an enforcer or a barrier to business. I've seen LSE go on its own risk journey over the last 4 years of working here. The embedding of a strong risk framework and tooling and working closely with the business leaders and their teams has matured the risk frameworks and embedded the risk culture. The first line perform most of the operational duties, RCAs, issue management, and then this enables the second line teams to be able to bring deeper risk insights, whether it's from deep dives, read across, learnings from external events. It's a symbiotic relationship where we learn from each other, keeping abreast of emerging risks and geopolitical events and understanding how they could impact your business, sometimes positively as well as negatively, is crucial for a CRO. And we also recognize the importance of empowering all colleagues within the organization to be risk aware, and this is implicit of a mature risk culture. One of our key initiatives from Group Risk is Risk Week. This is a week of driving risk awareness through various channels. It has first and second line events alongside prominent keynote speakers who share their unique experiences of managing and living with risk. Over the years, we've had racing car drivers, firefighters, and space scientists who have really helped risk bring it to life in a much more engaging and fun way that people can relate to within the company. And this brings me on to the final theme, enabling growth, and how a CRO acting as a partner to a resilient business can support strategic decisions which enable growth that is safe, sustainable, and compliant. And as risk professionals, we should never be serving a process just for the sake of it. I mentioned earlier the private securities markets. It's intended to be the world's first major regulated crossover private to public market. It's creating a regulatory environment where companies can choose to have an auction of their secondary shares at a point of time in their choosing, so say once a quarter or once every 6 months, but it uses the pipes and plumbing of the public markets. It offers a different liquidity profile for these assets, so our institutional investors can get involved. From a risk perspective, we have been involved through all stages of this exciting development, from its ideation through to when it launches later this year. Whether it's the provision of a policy and framework for the introduction of new products, or reviewing the strategic risk through its development, or providing the risk assurance of the deployment of new technology, the success of the private security markets is key for adapting how companies in the UK are funded, and risk is part of that. So to conclude, it's all on us as risk professionals to partner with our businesses to support strategic development opportunities whilst ensuring resilience by design. And this begins with embedding a strong risk culture within the organisation. We should ask ourselves, are we being constructive or obstructive? Do we understand all the consequences of not taking that risk? And likewise, do we have the appropriate structures to manage the risk when we do? Across the room today, we represent industry-leading institutions that have the power to make meaningful impacts to our industry. It is therefore imperative that we have empowering conversations which drive risk culture and enable safe and sustainable growth with our business leaders. Thank you.